So, both James Comey and John Brennan issuing warnings, but should they be worried tonight? Let's debate with former Chief Counsel for the House Judiciary Committee, Julian Epstein, and former DOJ prosecutor Jim Trusty. Welcome, gentlemen, to you both.
Hey, Shannon.
Good evening.
All right, I want to start by playing something that the former CIA director, John Brennan, had to say about this idea of declassifying what the president's doing. Here's what he said.
I see it as a very, very serious and outrageous move on the part of Mr. Trump, once again, trampling upon the statutory authorities of the Director of National Intelligence and the heads of the independent intelligence agencies. And it's unclear to me what Mr. Barr actually is going to do. Is he investigating a crime? Well, what's the predication of that crime?
So, Jim, what justifies the president taking this action?
Well, look, the president has pretty broad authority to do this. The key is not really what's going to happen with Barr. It's John Durham. And that's what I think Comey and Brennan are a little nervous about right now, which is you have a very independent, professional, dogged prosecutor that has a long reputation for being a straight shooter, but an aggressive one, who's going to have access to inspector general, to grand jury, now to declassified information for him to look at the origins of the investigation into Trump campaign. So that's the momentous part of this. It's not Barr and all the gratuitous attacks on him. It's what's going to happen with John Durham as he looks at all the originations.
Yeah, and my understanding, a source tells me that this is about kind of building out the infrastructure for Durham to be able to do his investigation, and when he does need something, to be able to go back through this channel to get it. Okay, Julian, I want you to respond to a little bit more of what we're hearing from Senator Graham. You heard a bit there. I want to play the fuller soundbite for you.
Barr is going to look at it from a criminal point of view. Horowitz is going to tell us about the FISA warrant, internally how the Department of Justice and the FBI behaved, and I'm going to look at all of it to make sure it never happens again. I'm going to make sure we have FISA laws that can detect when somebody's giving the court a bunch of garbage.
All right, Julian, so if we get a little bit more daylight and sunlight on this thing and it turns out nobody did anything wrong, I would think that would make everybody happy. But if there was something done wrong, regardless of party, shouldn't people be worried about the weaponization of any kind of legal or federal agency or branch?
Always. We should always be worried about the politicization of law enforcement. And I think in terms of Lindsey Graham's point, do we need sunlight? Sure. We should have as much sunlight on the origins of how this investigation got started. I think it's been investigated. It's been investigated when the Republicans were in charge of the Intelligence Committee. And I think it always showed that it started because the Russians were in contact with at least 4 different members of the Trump campaign. But let's investigate it. Let's get that information out on the table. Let's also get all the information out about Trump's tax returns, all of his contacts with Russia, Deutsche Bank, all the accounting matters that he's been strong-arming with Congress and losing subpoenas on. That's all fine. I think we should get as many facts on the table. I think Brennan's point was he was making a different point, which is these classification decisions have always been at the CIA and the intelligence agencies, and then kind of porting them over to the Department of Justice because there's a political agenda is what he's objecting to. But, you know, I want to make one other point, Shannon, which I think is very, very important. And I speak as somebody who kind of helped the fight against an impeachment inquiry 20 years ago, the Clinton impeachment inquiry. There are smart ways of kind of fighting back on these investigations, and there are dumb ways. When the Mueller report came out, the polls were pretty decent for Trump. And I think if he had just taken a more cooperative approach towards Congress and said, look, you guys investigate what you want. I don't think there's anything here to see. I think he could have wound down this Russia investigation relatively quickly by summer. What he's doing now, I'll come to a conclusion. What he's doing now with all of this stuff is he's breathing life into this entire Russia debate.
He's giving them something that he should close down instead.
He's breathing life into something, and he's starting to lose in the polls. Most Americans think that that the Mueller report did not exonerate him, and he's been untruthful.
Okay, let me get Jim back in here. But polls also show, and we had a number of them on the show last night, that most people, the majority of people, regardless of party, say enough already. The thing has been investigated to death. He allowed his people to talk. It's time for the Democrats to start legislating. But Jim, based on all these court battles and the subpoenas back and forth, I'm not sure that's where we're going right now.
Well, look, I'm not sure that Trump appeasing people, even if that was in his DNA, was exactly going to work here. But look, as to the legal part of this, and this is what's really kind of a shame, is that it's become a partisan issue, that you have Comey, screaming through Twitter and going on The View and complaining, and Brennan raising his head, and then Trump saying things like treason. You got a lot of fire, a lot of histrionics, but we should all care about the fact that the most sensitive public corruption investigation investigations were being led by a case agent who was clearly out of control biased, who had McCabe, who should have been recused, Comey, who had a special employee that wanted to go leak things to the New York Times, and open questions still as to the FISA application, whether the FBI knowingly deceived a court. So I think no matter what your politics, we should all be saying, let's get to the bottom of that part. And let's not cloud it with everything else we can talk about, but let's get to the bottom of how the Bureau and how DOJ conducted the investigation.
And take the emotion out of it. Just get to straight facts. And so on that moment of agreement, Julian and Jim, have a great weekend.
I was going to add to it, but we'll
we're
out of time, clearly.
Come back. Come back soon.